My name is Pascal. I'm 22 years old now, but this event happened 3 years ago when I was 19. It happened in the middle of the night when my parents were away for an important company meeting. The company was kind of far away from where we lived, so I stayed home by myself while they were gone. One time, while I was at home alone, I looked out the window randomly and froze. There was a tall man, almost dressed entirely in black. He was wearing a tuxedo and holding a kitchen knife. This guy was standing right outside of the door, looking at me. He wasn't laughing at all, and his head was twitching continuously. "Sir, please get off our property, otherwise I'll call the police." I opened the window and told him. Then the man replied, "Oh, you can do that if you want, as long as you don't look away." Because of this strange attitude, I felt anxious, so I grabbed my cell phone and called the police. But when I looked out the window again, he was gone. At that very moment, I heard footsteps coming from downstairs. I suddenly remembered that I forgot to lock my garden door, so it was still open. I thought I was gonna die at first, but then I pulled myself together. I got my bat and looked down the stairs, slowly, trying not to make a sound. There he was. He was just staring at me. He didn't move but said, "I told you not to look away." A few moments later, we heard sirens. The man still did not move. But then he suddenly changed his mind and walked over to me. I tried to swing my bat towards him, but I was so scared. I couldn't do anything except scream. The police broke down the door. One policeman tried to arrest him, and the other one tried to take the knife away from him, but the man resisted. He was strong. Even though he was outnumbered, they couldn't stop him. They threatened to shoot him in the foot, but he didn't care. Furthermore, he attacked the two policemen, and they tumbled down to the ground. I ran to one of the rooms and slammed the door shut, but he kicked in the door. When the door opened, I could see his face, and I will never, ever forget that moment. However, at that very moment, the police caught up to him and shot his foot. The guy started screaming in pain. Shortly after that, he managed to jump outside of a window and disappeared. The policemen chased after him, but unfortunately, they failed to arrest him. I never saw that guy again. I'm glad that I survived that incident, but I also feel nervous that he'll come to my house again. From that day on, I always made sure I locked all the doors and windows.
One rainy night 3 years ago, I was driving on a quiet road with no other cars. Despite of the heavy rain, I managed to spot a soaked-up man standing at the side of the road. His presence was strange. There was no place for pedestrians anywhere nearby. I thought that something may have happened to him, so I stopped the car. My headlights lit him up slightly. He seemed to be grinning widely. I was surprised, as my initial assumption had been that something was wrong. But if that was the case, why would he be laughing like that? I lowered my window, only a little, feeling unsure. The man approached. When he got closer, and I got a better look at his face, my heart dropped. He wasn't smiling. He had no upper lip at all, as if it had been cut off. I could see his eyes were red. I wasn't sure if all the water running down his face was rain, or if there were tears mixed in. I spoke in a trembling voice. "Sir, do you need any help?" Then he suddenly screamed and rushed at me. "You should be like me!" He took out his knife and stuck it through the small opening in the window, madly trying to force it down further. I hurriedly closed the window and started the car, then hit the gas. I could see him chasing me like crazy from the rearview mirror. I floored it with all my might and got the heck out of there. I don't even remember exactly how I got home, and my trembling heart wouldn't calm down until morning. Even after all these years, I tremble whenever I think about that night. I don't have any idea what that man's story could have been, what kind of a person he was, or if he was even human. But one thing is for sure. I will never drive on that road again.
Happened a few days ago. I found a cell phone in the corner of my bed while cleaning my room. Of course, it was not mine, and it didn't belong to any of my friends either. So I turned on the cell phone to check what was in it, and I was left speechless. Well, I've never seen that cell phone while living in this house for several years. I found it just today. But when I checked the phone's recent call history, one was made just yesterday. If someone knows the answer to this, please let me know. What should I do with this cell phone now?
This happened pretty recent, about 3 weeks ago. Myself and 3 friends were hanging out at a shopping center one evening. We were messing around posting clips on TikTok. Then one of my friends started laughing, and I asked her what she was laughing at. She told me that guy behind us kept staring at me. When I turned around, it was some older guy just watching me. He had black sunglasses, a cap, an old Adidas tracksuit with scuffed up shoes, and had a disgusting looking beard. My friends thought it was hilarious, but I found it really weird. Then another one of my friends said she thinks that guy lives on her street, about a few houses down from her. She said that he actually follows her on TikTok. At that point, I quickly got my phone out to check if he was following me, and he was. I had to block him because he seemed a bit creepy. We went to get McDonald's before we went home, and I received a message on TikTok from someone. It was that guy who had been following us. His name was Greg, and he wrote, "Why did you block me?" with 2 emojis. One was a crying face, and the other one was an angry face. He had actually created another account that day in the shopping center. I blocked that account as well, hoping that would be the end of it. I didn't mention it to my friends this time, knowing they would just laugh. That night, I was up late and had Netflix on in the background as I was chatting with my friends on Facebook while scrolling through TikTok. I got up to use the bathroom, and when I returned, I had 3 messages from my friends, all saying the same thing. All were things like, "Who's in your room?" and "What's up with your last post?" I asked them what they were talking about, and they told me to check my TikTok, so I did. It was a clip of my bedroom. It was a clip of someone picking up my phone and recording the inside of my room. At that point, I heard a creaking. Then I heard a man's voice say, "Sorry, please don't scream," and turned to see my closet door slightly open. I started to scream when the same guy who had been following us burst out of my closet and tried to cover my mouth. Thank God I screamed and it was enough for my parents to hear. They came upstairs and my dad tackled the guy to the floor. The police were called and he was arrested. We were informed that the guy had straight up admitted to stalking and breaking and entering. One of my friends pointed out, if I go back and look at the post on TikTok from when we were in the shopping center, you can see Greg is in almost all of those pictures, somewhere in the background. I haven't heard what's going to happen to Greg yet, but I just hope he won't ever come near us again.
I moved into another town. The town was very small and isolated and had a small population. I started going to a small boxing gym, and only a few guests used that gym as well. Whenever I go to the gym, I could see there were about 1 or 2 people. The gym was barely managed and used to smell something weird, like someone's sweat. I learned almost nothing from there for 2 months. The instructor was not always there, and I just go to the empty gym and work out by myself every time. Still, I had no choice but to go there since it was the only gym in the neighborhood. In addition, it was good to use as much exercise equipment as possible. Another advantage was that there were quite a few punching bags in the gym, which were much softer and more elastic than ordinary ones. It seemed to be a kind of luxury punching bag. The instructor always looked at me with a cold eye whenever he meets me, but it didn't matter anyway. All I have to do is just exercise at the gym. Then one day, something happened. Suddenly, the cops came into the gym and started asking the instructor lots of things. It is said that people were constantly missing in this small town. After concluding that the criminal was in the neighborhood, the cops started to look for him, but they were unable to catch him. It was a little creepy for no reason. Well, I'm a strong dude. Thinking like that, I just shook it off. After that, the time has passed. One day, I came out to exercise as usual, then found police cars parked in front of the gym. As I got closer, I couldn't help but be shocked. The instructor was being arrested. The cops blocked me from entering the gym, but I could literally see it. I could see those things through the narrow view. It was the bodies that were being pulled out of the punching bag by the police. The punching bags in the gym contain the bodies of the missing person. The police investigation revealed that the instructor had killed a total of 6 people in the town and kept the bodies in a punching bag to create an alibi to avoid the police. I started to panic after the police interrogation and immediately came up with something. I mean, the feel of the punching bag. I threw up right away. After that day, I've been suffering trauma and eventually quit boxing and moved to another place. However, even now, I can't forget the weird stench of the gym. The smells that I thought were just sweat.
This happened last year around December. I was a sophomore and both my parents worked until 11 p.m. So by the time they came home, I was either asleep or playing on my phone. One night, it was around 9 p.m. and I felt thirsty, so I went to the kitchen to go get some water. When I glanced over and looked through the window of my door, there was a shadow of a person. I was very paranoid about these types of things, especially since I was home alone. I mean, it was really weird. Like, there was someone just standing in front of my doorstep, and they didn't even knock or ring the doorbell. So I went to the front door slowly and looked out the peephole to see who was standing there. And what I saw was heart-stopping. It was a man in his late 30s or early 40s. He had blood all over his shirt and face, and the worst part was that there were 2 more men behind him. They looked younger than him. I thought that I was probably going to get robbed or even killed. As I was slowly backing away, I heard one of them whispering, "One of you go and see if the back door is open." I immediately rushed to the back door before the other man could, but fortunately, the door was locked as usual. I then ran upstairs and called the police. They wanted me to stay on the phone with them, but as soon as they said that, I could hear the back gate being crushed. I was frightened, but tried not to scream as hard as possible. However, not long after, I could hear both men trying to break the front door too. I realized that they managed to come inside, so I ran into the bathroom and locked myself in there. At least 3 pairs of footsteps were barging about the house. Eventually, they were going to come upstairs, so I opened the window, getting ready to jump. One of the men was coming upstairs slowly, and each footstep was getting closer and closer. And that was the moment. He tried to twist the doorknob to open the door, but as it was locked, he knew. He yelled to the other man, "Someone's hiding in there," and he continued turning the doorknob violently. Again, I forced my hands over my mouth so that I wouldn't scream. I literally jumped out of the window into a bush. I hurt myself a little bit from the fall, but there was no time to hesitate. I stood up and turned to my left, and what I saw was the most terrifying thing I ever saw in my life. 2 other men was sitting at the back of my house, like as if they knew the window was there. They were waiting for me to jump. I was frustrated when they both stared right into my eyes. However, I immediately ran towards the street as fast as I could, and those 2 men started chasing after me. I thought I was going to die, but just then, I could hear the police sirens nearby, and as I turned around, I saw both men running in the opposite direction. One of the cops found me, and the other cops ran straight ahead and chased after them. I told them that there were more in the house. Finally, those 2 men were arrested, while 3 more cops rushed into my house. A few moments later, all the men were captured and handcuffed. I was so shocked and couldn't believe my eyes when they all were taken outside by the cops. It was not just 3 men who broke into our house. There were 7 in total, and they were all waiting for me to come out. While some of the cops were soothing me, the other cop called my parents, telling them what happened, and they immediately came back home. Shortly after, it turned out that those 7 men found out that I was the only one inside the house, so they planned to break in. Since then, I never stayed home alone, and I would always sleep at my grandma's house whenever I had to stay alone. But still, I always fear the fact that another incident may occur someday. That day, I saw him on one of my usual walks along the bridge. He was a tall, middle-aged man in a cheap-looking suit. I approached him carefully, not wanting to spook him. I asked, "Sir?" He turned around quickly with his face drenched in sweat. "Who are you?" he asked nervously. I answered with a smile. "I'm Mandy. You should move away from here. It's pretty dangerous," I said, pointing to the edge of the bridge where he was standing. "What are you doing here?" He looked at me for a few seconds before speaking again. "Oh, I come here often. It's quiet, so I like that." I smiled at him again. He then looked down at the water below. He also said that I really shouldn't be hanging out in a place like this. "Your parents must be worried about it." He sounded calmer, but wouldn't meet my eyes. I spoke softly. "Well, my parents know I'm here. They know I like to help people like you." He turned to me, and I looked at him without blinking. I knew that he wanted to jump. The look on his face changed to one of uneasiness, so he tried to say something, but nothing came out. "It will hurt like nothing's ever hurt before. And it's just a fall, but the aftermath is even worse." His eyes widened and he shouted, "Get out of here, kid! You don't even know what you're talking about!" He sounded more alarmed than angered. I continued to look at him as he breathed heavily. Then I slowly pointed to the pictures and flowers attached to the railings just behind him. "Actually, I do." He looked in the direction I was pointing, taking a few seconds to process what he was seeing. He then turned around slowly to look at me, pure horror on his face. How can you?" At that moment, I knew I had saved him. At least for now. He stood there for a moment longer, frozen and unsure of what to do. Then he didn't say any words, simply turned around and ran as fast as he could. I dropped my shoulders and breathed a sigh of relief. I walked over to the railings and just sat there, looking at the pictures. "We miss you, Mandy," was written on a big card decorated with hearts and flowers right next to my yearbook photo. "Gone too soon," said another, surrounded by teddy bears, clothes, and lots of flowers. It all looked so pretty. "My name is Mandy. I was 19 when I died, and now I try to help people live."
I'm 30 years old, and this story took place when I was 13. My mother was a single mom, and she had to work 2 jobs. She worked at a grocery store in the morning and a bar at night. So I was home alone a lot, but it was okay because I was used to it. I could cook myself some dinner and walk back and forth to school. I was a pretty responsible kid for my age. One night, I was watching TV while eating ice cream, and someone knocked at the front door. I was wondering who it could be, as my friends never came out this late and my mom would always use her key to get in. I opened the door, and it was a man standing there with his hands in his pockets. I said, "Hello?" He replied, "Hello, young lady. Are your parents home?" Stupidly, I said, "No. My mom isn't home right now. You have to come back tomorrow." He then said with a surprised smile on his face, "Oh, you're all alone, huh?" I said, yeah, I am." He replied with, "Okay, young lady. Have a nice night. Don't get into any trouble." He then walked away and I closed the door. He seemed friendly, but also weird at the same time. He was a little funny looking though. He was balding and had 70s style glasses on, with a mustache and bags under his eyes like he never slept. About 10 minutes passed, and there was another knock at the door. I got up to answer it, but before I opened the door, something told me to put the chain on. I don't know why, but my gut told me to do that. It was strange because we really didn't use the chain. But I'm glad I did, because as soon as I opened the door, it was pushed open, but abruptly stopped by the chain. Before I could even say or do anything, I looked through the crack of the door to see the same man again. And he said in a startled voice, Oh, hey there. I just wanted to make sure you were okay," as he stuttered. It was like he knew he failed getting inside the house and tried to play off any suspicion by speaking quickly and making it seem like he didn't just obviously try coming into the house. I said, "I'm fine, thanks," and I shut the door. At that time, I didn't really understand the situation or the dangers of what just happened. But still, I was a bit freaked out and wanted my mom to come home soon. An hour went by, and I was still thinking about what happened, so I started to watch a movie, trying to keep my mind occupied, when I heard,
"Hey, let me in quick. I gotta tell you something."
This was the scariest situation I've ever been in my life. It was the man once again. He was talking through the letterbox. I shouted, "Leave me alone." The letterbox closed. Then the man started banging on the front door, screaming, "Let me in, you little shit," while slamming the front door handle up and down trying to get in. I just stood back crying, praying he doesn't get in. He eventually gave up and left. My mom came home about 30 minutes later, just to find me crying, and I told her everything that happened. We told the police, but they never found this guy. I look back, and I think how grateful I am that I had the feeling to put the chain on the door. I hate to think what that man would have done if he had managed to get in.
This happened around the year 2011, when I was 13. One day my friend was planning on throwing a party at his place, so my older cousin drove me there. It took about 4 hours to get there, and when I finally arrived, it was around 8 p.m. A few hours later, we were having fun, but out of nowhere, I had to use the bathroom really badly. About 5 minutes had passed, and while I was in the bathroom, I heard a crunching noise coming from the woods. At first, I thought it was someone who arrived late to the party, but all of a sudden, I heard loud banging on the glass. I started to think it might be my friend just looking for me, so I told him that I was inside the bathroom. However, it wasn't my friend. It was a guy who looked like he was in his late 50s. He said that his car broke down. He then asked me to help him, but I was already paranoid about strangers. So I simply told him that I couldn't help him. He nodded his head and walked away. When I was done using the bathroom, I went back to the room where my friend was. I told him what I saw and what the man said to me. My friend looked like he just saw a ghost. Then he finally said that for almost 2 months, this man was stalking his entire family and also saw him from the bathroom window tons of times. They asked the police to check their area several times, but they couldn't help his family. When he said that, I thought he was overreacting until I heard the same banging noise now coming from the door. It was more violent now. Everybody paused what they were doing and looked at the door in shock. One guest broke the silence and said it was probably only the pizza delivery man. But my friend told me not to answer the door at all costs. I looked through the peephole, and there he was. The same guy I saw through the bathroom's window. He had a psychotic-looking face and was licking his lips nonstop. We all just stood there in silence and hoped that the man would go away. But after a few minutes, the loud noise came from the basement. The guy threw a brick at the basement's window and crawled through it. Suddenly, it sounded as if a gunshot echoed through the entire house. My friend and most of the partygoers screamed and ran out of the house. I stayed behind along with a few others. One of the older kids was trained in martial arts, so I saw him assault and attack the man until he was shot. Afterward, the man escaped and ran into the woods. The whole scene was chaotic now. An ambulance and police car arrived soon after, and fortunately, the kid that was shot survived. After a few days of intense investigation, the police went to my friend's house and told him that they caught the guy. It turns out that he was living in the woods. He also kidnapped 3 kids, but luckily they were found in time and set free. But they also found out that he had already killed a few kids already. So after that, he was condemned to death for murder.
One day, I was home with my 2 older brothers. My mom was at work, and she wouldn't be back until 8 p.m. So, as a young girl, I was basically home alone with my older brothers. Keep in mind, I was only 7 years old, and my brothers were 13 and 14. They were also very protective of me at that time. Anyway, I remember this incident so vividly, I don't think anything can make me forget about it. And sometimes I get nightmares because of it. While my brothers and I were eating some cake, the doorbell suddenly rang. Remember, our grandparents and mom told us never to answer the door unless they let us know that someone is coming over. Saying like this, my second brother told us not to get near the door. However, the oldest brother thought he is just a chicken and went to the door. Before he opens it, he then looked out the window and immediately ducked down. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. Second brother took a look outside as well and quickly drew the curtains. "What's going on?" I asked, but my first brother took a huge freaking knife from the kitchen. "Bring me the phone, now!" I could even see him grabbing some pepper spray. I gave him the phone and approached the door. As a naive young girl, I ended up opening the door. That's when my second brother carried me and started running. It was just in time. I could see a bullet sliding by my little face. Luckily, it didn't hit me. The 3 of us rushed to the bedroom. It had 2 locks on it, and as soon as we locked the door, the sick freak started banging on the door. I burst crying so loud, and he said to me, "Don't worry, child. I can help you put her to sleep." My brother yelled, "Get the hell out of our house!" Then he took his phone from me and called the police and one of our neighbors to get some help. Fortunately, the police immediately arrived and he arrested right in the place. My mom also came back home after she got a phone call from the police. She told us that she would hire a babysitter. It turned out that guy was a serious stalker and a murderer, and he even had killed more than 10 kids. Of course, he was eventually sentenced to death. Several years later, I turned 20 years old, and I was watching the news with my mom and 2 brothers. There was a murder case that 2 young boys had been murdered in their house. I know that it's not the same criminal from my case, but it hurts my heart knowing that those kinds of people actually exist out there. I hope they stop doing that horrible thing.